Nobody likes doing a bunch of work and getting no praise or credit for it. Nothing feels worse than putting loads of effort into something only for it to go completely unnoticed. So to all of you smart people out there that make games, just know that we've got your back and we appreciate you. I'm Amy from WhatCulture, and here are 10 video games with an insane level of detail that no one noticed. 10. The WWE developers injured themselves capturing moves. The WWE video game series is one of the many factory-line sports games that come out every year simply because they can. Whilst the quality of the games in the WWE series ranges from pretty damn good to downright terrible, the developers did the gaming equivalent of method acting to make sure that 2K15 was their best yet. To get everything accurate and correct in terms of animations, facial expressions, entrances and more, they did hours upon hours of painstaking research. They wanted to get the motion capture aspects of wrestling just perfect. So they decided to get a full regulation wrestling ring and actually motion capture themselves, jumping off the top of the rope, taking hits and bumps and slams, etc. After countless bruises, busted knees and spilt blood imitating famous finishing moves poorly, the developers learned the hard way that play fighting is probably just as difficult, if not more so, than actual fighting. Unfortunately, WWE 2K15 didn't exactly resonate well with critics or gamers despite the literal blood spilled by the developers, but we have to give them some credit for the effort. 9. Portal 2's crazy concepts are actually scientifically sound. Portal 2 is the beloved sequel in a series that became popular by accident. Despite the simple premise, the developers really put a lot of time and effort into what was initially just a side project. Whilst players are flinging shell out of portals left and right within the painstakingly recreated laboratory levels, the developers made sure that the portal gun's physics, such as momentum redirection, were 100% applicable to real life. The best example of Valve showing their work is actually during the slightly controversial climax. The roof collapses during the final battle and you need to project a portal onto the moon to succeed. Doing such a thing seemed to stretch the suspension of belief a little too much, considering nothing beforehand was so over the top, but in actuality it's totally within the realm of possibility. As it had been established, portals travel at the speed of light, so to get one on the moon would actually only take about 1.4 seconds, meaning that travelling to the moon isn't actually that big of a deal, if you have a portal gun. 8. DRIVECLUB'S scale of production was insane. Driving sims are a dime a dozen, but not all of them put the same amount of effort and detail into their models as others. Each car in this game was built from the ground up using 260,000 polygons for a start. A single car took about 7 months to develop, from licensing, photo referencing, gathering data from the car manufacturers, production, and then final approval. That lengthy process is pretty much on par with how actual car manufacturers work, and the final DRIVECLUB models are considered better than the actual manufacturer's car models, that is, after any of the real-world effects have taken their toll. But it's not all about the cars. The level of lavish detail was also applied in the racing environment. The developers made sure that cloud formations, the movement of grass and leaves, the weather conditions and the changing lighting conditions were all dynamic and completely accurate. In fact, they rendered 1 million trees just for the game's Canadian track. 7. Shadow the Hedgehog has 326 individual story scenarios. Sonic fans have always had a bit of a divide, in that some are young kids that love the character as is, and others, as they get older, want a bit more of an edge to the Sonic games. Because having Sonic do a shoot-'em-up didn't feel quite right, Sega decided to create the anti-Sonic in the form of Shadow. His darker rival proved to be quite popular, enough to have his own game, but for a title featuring a secondary character who's no more than Sonic's less popular, forever scowling third cousin, the Sonic team still put quite a lot of underappreciated effort into it. Sega decided to implement a morality system in which a level can have a good, a bad, and a neutral finish. Each choice Shadow made affected the next level and the final ending you could get. Based on the number of levels and choices, Sega mapped out a total of 326 possible story scenarios that can lead to one of 10 endings. That is a lot of math, a lot of mapping, and a real big story for a Sonic game. Now, the effort is much appreciated, Sega, but to get gamers to replay Shadow the Hedgehog 3 times is quite the ask, let alone 325 times. 6. The Call of Duty series isn't all about explosions. The Call of Duty series is renowned for being all guns and explosions and angry teenagers hurling insults through their headsets, but what the game doesn't get enough credit for is the amount of detail they squeeze in that you're likely to never notice. In Black Ops, you can sometimes see your character's watch. Whilst playing as Agent Hudson, the time is always correct based on your system clock. However, when playing as Mason, the time is all over the place. very subtly foreshadowing Mason's unhinged mental state. In Modern Warfare 3, during the Sub-Zero gravity sequence in the mission Turbulence, if you try to reload, your magazine will actually float away like in real life. In Black Ops 2 multiplayer, when the tactical insertion gadget is used, a PDA is briefly held up that has a set of coordinates on the screen. Google Map those coordinates and you'll find that they correspond to your in-game location in the real world. There are a million more tiny details like this, but I guess it's easy to miss them when you're playing whilst sleep-deprived, fueled by Red Bull, and screaming unsavory things back at the teenagers. 5. Skyrim's world is fully independent without you. There was a time when Skyrim was the very best open-world game due to its unparalleled freedom in allowing you to do whatever the hell you wanted. But what's even more impressive about the game is actually the attention to detail. The advanced AI for NPCs gives each character their own independent life away from your antics, and will ensure that their interactions with you depend on what you do in the game world. There are some more obvious ones, such as when you drop some unwanted armor on the ground, someone might chastise you for littering, or another might return it to you, for example. When you've mastered a few skills, such as pickpocketing, other characters will warn you to stay away, assumedly because by then you've got a bit of a reputation as a shifty character. Lastly, there's the ridiculously detailed game world, which people do sort of already acknowledge to a degree. Specifically, we need to appreciate the sheer amount of useless stuff you can pick up everywhere. Every single book in-game was specifically written for its own standalone story, and each of the 9 stronghold areas was specifically and painstakingly designed to look and feel different to one another, such as the snow-filled Windhelm to the autumn-inspired Riften. 4. LA Noire's research team really did their work. LA Noire is a widely loved and praised game, and that's for good reason. What most people don't realise though is just how much work went into making virtual LA, and what had to be done to properly capture Mr. Phelps' craziness. Developers Team Bondi ended up spending a year researching 1940s LA using over 180,000 photos, over 1,000 newspapers, and numerous field trips. This resulted in stupendously detailed buildings and interiors that were accurately modelled after real hotels still standing in LA. As you may know, it was the face modelling and motion capture technology basket that the team put most of their eggs in. Called Motion Scan, Team Bondi were able to capture incredibly lifelike moving human faces by filming the actors reading their lines over the period of a year and a half, doing this using 32 cameras going at over 1,000 frames per second. All in all, development of LA Noire took 7 years, $50 million, and a heap of staff complaints. All of this had to happen before gamers finally got to see a supporting character in Mad Men yell at a bunch of video game suspects. 3. Grand Theft Auto 5's tiny details. Given how long each Grand Theft Auto game takes to develop and how massive and awesome the resultant product is every time, it's safe to say that Grand Theft Auto 5 would be Rockstar's biggest and most detailed yet. Still, many gamers won't truly grasp just how big and detailed GTA 5 is until it's broken down. Firstly, the 49 square mile game world was created using over 250,000 photos, hours of footage, numerous field trips, and even meetings with the FBI and Mafia experts. They also made use of real-life geographical and demographic census data across the overall spread of LA, so as to replicate it accurately in the game. These are big sweeping things, but there's the little stuff too. Like that when you wade in water, only the part of you submerged gets wet. If you block traffic, drivers will get angry and flip you off. And if you photograph a street performer without tipping, they'll get angry and maybe chase you. It really is less of a game and more of a real-life simulation, except, with more bank heists. 2. The Metal Gear Solid series has real-time melting ice cubes. The Metal Gear Solid games are renowned for their intricate storylines and innovative stealth-based gameplay. What the series is slightly less renowned for, though, is that each serves as a testbed for the series creator, Hideo Kojima, to squeeze in as many intricate details as he possibly can. In the first Metal Gear Solid, Kojima had every single desk designed individually in order to trick the players into thinking the world was real. In Metal Gear Solid 2, a disproportionate amount of effort was put into making sure ice cubes melted realistically when knocked out of a small holder in the tanker level, and the methods and tactics used by guards were modelled after real-life search teams. Hell, there's even a spot in the credits dedicated solely to the researchers because of this. Snake Eater implemented a feature during dark levels in which the screen got slightly brighter after some time had passed, in order to realistically mimic the human eye adjusting itself to the dark, whilst Metal Gear Solid 4 had metal drums in which Snake could hide in or roll into guards with, and instead of walking it off afterwards, he'd get so dizzy he actually vomits. 1. The Shenmue games have the most interactive open world ever. With open world titles in general, there's usually the main storyline, a bunch of side missions and mini-games, and some nice little Easter eggs for those who want to hunt down every last drop of content. Shenmue went an extra mile or two by making their recreation of Yokosuka so detailed that you can literally open every drawer in the game, flick every light switch, and explore almost every building. As the game is set in the 1980s, developers studied meteorological records of the actual suburb in order to ensure the in-game weather patterns adhered to what happened in real life. As for all the NPCs and residents of the virtual Yokosuka, they were all designed to lead their own independent lives whilst keeping to a schedule. With crazy details like these, what was most impressive actually was that everything was possible despite the Dreamcast's comparative lack of power and grunt. And on that note, we've reached the end of this list of 10 video games with an insane level of detail that no one noticed. If you can think of any more insane details that you think people should start noticing in your favourite game, then drop them in the comments down below. And remember to check out WhatCulture.com for more lists and articles like this every single day. As always, I've been Amy from WhatCulture, and I'll catch you next time.